The night sky of the alien planet burned red. Warships moved like shadows above the clouds, sending fire down to the ground. The jungle shook with explosions, trees fell, and strange animals cried in fear. Captain Ethan Hayes ran through the darkness, breathing hard. His armor was scratched, his blaster almost empty, and his body screamed for rest. He was a human soldier, stranded after his unit was destroyed. Alone, hunted, and lost in a war that was not even his own. As he pushed through the vines, his earpiece crackled with a strange sound. Not human, not machine, but something in between. He stopped, pressing a finger to his ear, listening carefully. It was a distress signal, weak and broken. The words were in alien language, but the fear in the voice was clear. Ethan narrowed his eyes. A survivor, he whispered to himself. But who? Another soldier? A civilian? A trap? Still, something about the voice pushed him forward. He followed the signal deeper into the jungle, every step dangerous. Minutes later, he reached a clearing. In the middle lay a crashed escape pod, its hull smoking. Strange blue fire burned across the wreck, lighting up the trees. Blaster marks covered the metal, proof that enemies had tried to destroy it. Ethan moved carefully, gun ready. Then he saw her, a tall figure trapped inside the pod, dressed in torn royal armor. Her skin was silver, her eyes glowing violet, and her crown broken across her forehead. Even in pain, her presence was powerful. Ethan realized with a shock. She was not just anyone. She was Princess Liara, heir of the Valari Empire. He had seen her face on holoscreens before, a leader-to-be of one of the most powerful alien races. And now she was here, wounded, helpless, and hunted. Blaster fire cracked through the trees. Shadows moved fast. Mercenaries, assassins, hunters. They had found her, and they would kill her in seconds. Ethan's heart pounded. He could run, hide, and save himself. Or he could do something insane. Save an alien princess who would never care about a human like him. For a moment, he hesitated. The choice meant life or death. But then, deep inside, something burned. He was a human soldier, and humans did not abandon the helpless. With a sharp breath, he charged forward. Blasters lit up the night as Ethan fired back at the assassins. His shots were precise, his movements quick. He dived beside the pod, smashed the lock open, and pulled the princess free. She gasped, weak but furious. "Human," she hissed. "You should not be here." Ethan grinned despite the danger. "Nice to meet you too, Your Highness. Now move if you want to live." The mercenaries surrounded the clearing, their armor dark, their weapons sharp. Ethan held his ground, pulling Liara behind a broken piece of metal. He fired, taking down two, but there were too many. The princess raised her hand, trying to use her alien power, but she was too weak. The hunters closed in, and death felt only a second away. Then Ethan spotted a fuel cell leaking from the escape pod. His eyes narrowed, his mind racing. He grabbed a broken cable, sparking with energy, and threw it toward the fuel. The explosion ripped through the clearing, sending fire and smoke everywhere. The assassins were thrown back screaming, their formation broken. Ethan pulled the princess to her feet, half carrying her. "We're not safe yet, move," he shouted. She stumbled, glaring at him, but she had no choice. Together, they rushed into the jungle as more shadows poured in behind them. Blaster fire lit the trees. The night became a storm of smoke and screams. Ethan's body ached, but his focus was sharp. Every step was survival. Every breath was borrowed time. The princess leaned on him, her pride burning even in weakness. "You are reckless, foolish, yet somehow alive," she whispered. Ethan gave a short laugh. "Welcome to humanity, princess." They reached a river, the water glowing faint blue under the alien moons. Without hesitation, Ethan pulled her into the current. Blaster bolts hit the water around them, but the river carried them away. The jungle swallowed the sound of their hunters, leaving only silence and rushing water. For the first time in hours, Ethan could breathe. The princess looked at him, her violet eyes glowing in the dark. Her voice was sharp but curious. Why? Why would a human risk his life for me? Ethan stared at her, water dripping from his helmet. Because no one else would, he said simply, and with those words, the first seed of something dangerous began to grow between them. Above, the warships still moved like shadows. The galaxy still burned. But now, fate had tied a human soldier and an alien princess together, and nothing would ever be the same. The river carried Ethan and Princess Liara through the jungle like a silver snake. The water glowed with strange light. Small alien fish darted between them, leaving trails of sparks. Finally, they reached the bank, pulling themselves out, soaked and gasping. Ethan dropped to one knee, catching his breath. His armor was heavy with water, his blaster nearly ruined. But he forced himself to stand, scanning the trees. He knew the hunters would not give up so easily. Princess Liara pushed herself upright, her silver skin glowing faint in the moonlight. Her crown was broken, her robes torn, yet she still stood tall, as if she was not wounded. Her violet eyes narrowed at him, filled with pride and irritation. "You should not have saved me, human," she said coldly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You're welcome," he muttered, shaking water from his helmet. Liara crossed her arms, swaying slightly from exhaustion. "You do not understand. By helping me, you have brought death upon yourself. My enemies will never stop. They will hunt you across this planet, and your fragile human body will not survive." Ethan gave her a dry smile. "Good thing I'm stubborn." For a moment, silence hung between them. The alien jungle hummed with life, glowing plants pulsing like beating hearts. In the distance, a low growl echoed, something massive moving through the trees. Ethan checked his blaster, then motioned forward. "We move before they find us." Liara frowned. "Where?" "There is nowhere safe. My people have abandoned this world. My enemies control every path." Ethan pointed through the trees. "Not every path, princess. Trust me." She tilted her head, curious but annoyed. "Trust? Humans speak of trust so easily," she said. "But you know nothing of me." Ethan shrugged. "I know enough. You're alive, and that means I did the right thing." They moved through the jungle together, the princess limping slightly, Ethan keeping close. The plants towered above them, glowing veins spreading across leaves wider than shields. Strange birds shrieked overhead, their wings like crystal. Every step felt watched, the air thick with danger. After an hour of silence, Liara finally spoke. "You walk as if you know this place." Ethan smirked. "Not really, but humans are good at finding ways where there are none." She studied him, her expression unreadable. "In my world, strategy belongs to generals, not wanderers." "In mine," Ethan replied, "strategy belongs to survivors." Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked. Ethan pulled Liara back just in time as the earth gave way. They slid down into darkness, landing hard on stone. Groaning, Ethan looked around. They were inside ancient ruins, massive stone walls glowing with alien symbols. The air smelled of dust and old power. Liara's eyes widened. "These ruins, they are forbidden. My people say they were built by the first ones long before our empire rose." Ethan brushed dirt from his armor. "Well, it looks like the first ones just saved us a shortcut." But before they could rest, a new sound filled the chamber. Claws clicking against stone. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared in the shadows. Creatures crawled down the walls, spider-like with sharp mandibles, their bodies armored with crystal. Ethan raised his blaster, heart racing. Of course, alien spiders, why not? Liara lifted her broken staff, trying to summon energy, but her power flickered weakly. "They are guardians of this place," she whispered. "They will not let us leave alive." Ethan fired a shot, the blast echoing through the chamber. One creature fell, but more swarmed forward. He grabbed Liara's arm, pulling her behind a pillar. "Stay low, princess. I'll handle the ugly ones." The creatures closed in, their fangs dripping acid. Ethan fired again, but his blaster clicked empty. He cursed under his breath, then spotted loose stones above. Thinking fast, he aimed at the ceiling instead of the monsters. The blast struck the weak arch, and rocks came crashing down. The creatures screeched, trapped under the rubble. Breathing hard, Ethan lowered the empty weapon. Liara stared at him, astonished. You had no weapon left, yet you chose to destroy the ceiling, risking death. Why? Ethan gave a crooked grin. Because humans don't always fight harder, sometimes we fight smarter. For the first time, her lips curved into something like a smile. It vanished quickly, but Ethan caught it. Perhaps you are not as simple as you look, human, she admitted softly. The ruins grew quiet again, dust settling in the air. Ethan leaned against the wall, tired but alive. He glanced at Liara, seeing not just a princess, but a survivor like him. Maybe she was starting to see him differently too. But outside, in the jungle above, their hunters still searched. And sooner or later, the silence would break again. The ruins stretched deep underground, their halls carved with glowing symbols. Every wall seemed alive, pulsing with forgotten power. Ethan walked carefully, scanning the shadows, while Princess Liara followed with a proud but silent stride. They had escaped the spider-like guardians, but the tension between them had not faded. Ethan's steps echoed in the chamber, his armor scraping against stone. Liara's gaze moved constantly, sharp and suspicious, as if she could not decide whether he was her savior or her enemy. Hours passed in silence until they stopped near a collapsed archway. Ethan dropped his pack with a sigh, his body aching from the fight. He sat on a rock, pulled off a ration bar, and started chewing. The sound made Liara wrinkle her nose. "What is that?" she asked, her voice carrying a mix of disgust and curiosity. "Food," Ethan replied simply, holding up the small silver wrapper. "Not good food, but food." Liara tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing. "You eat this?" she asked, stepping closer. "Processed chemicals? It smells like dirt and metal." Ethan chuckled, "Pretty much," and took another bite. For a princess who had lived her life surrounded by servants and feasts, the sight of a soldier chewing dry rations was shocking. But what stunned her more was that he didn't complain, didn't demand comfort, didn't need luxury. Humans, she realized, were strangely adaptable. Ethan noticed her staring. "You want a bite?" he teased, holding the bar toward her. Her lips parted in horror. "I would rather starve," she said sharply. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Suit yourself, princess." For a brief moment, the silence turned lighter. As Ethan rested, Liara studied him more carefully. His armor was battered, his body scarred, yet his eyes carried a strange fire. Unlike her warriors, who fought with pride for glory, this human fought with something else. She could not name it yet, but it unsettled her. Soon, they continued walking deeper into the ruins. Ethan carried a small torch, its light flickering across the walls. The symbols carved into the stone shifted faintly, as if reacting to their presence. Liara whispered, almost to herself, "These are words of the first ones. They speak of survival, of sacrifice." Ethan glanced at her. "Sounds familiar." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan's voice grew quiet. "On Earth, survival and sacrifice are the story of humanity. It's what made us who we are." Liara slowed, surprised by his tone. This was not arrogance, not boasting, but truth. She realized he was not just a soldier. He was a survivor of countless battles even before this war. As they reached a wide chamber, strange pillars rose like bones from the floor. In the center stood a broken statue of an alien warrior, its face half erased by time. Ethan stopped, scanning the shadows. Then he spoke without looking at her. "Why were they after you, princess? Why risk everything for one person?" Liara stiffened, her pride returning in full. "I am heir to the Valari throne," she said, her voice sharp. "If I fall, the empire weakens, my enemies grow strong." Ethan nodded, leaning on his blaster. "So you're a symbol," he said simply. Liara's eyes flashed. "I am more than a symbol. I am destiny for my people. Ethan smirked. Sure, but right now you're also someone who almost drowned and couldn't walk without help. Her jaw tightened, fury and embarrassment mixing in her expression. No one speaks to me this way, she hissed. Ethan's grin widened. That's the problem. Maybe someone should. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Liara's pride clashed with the raw honesty of the human. No alien dared speak so bluntly to her, yet somehow his words cut deeper than any insult. Because he was right, she was alive only because of him. Before she could answer, a distant rumble shook the ruins. Dust fell from the ceiling, cracks spread across the walls. Ethan cursed under his breath, grabbing her arm. Time to move. Princess, this place is falling apart. They ran together through the collapsing halls, the ground breaking behind them. Ethan pushed aside fallen stone, pulling her through gaps too narrow for her royal armor. She stumbled, but his hands steadied her every time, never letting go. When they finally burst out into the jungle night, gasping, the ruins crumbled behind them, swallowed by dust and silence. Liara bent over, breathing hard, her silver hair clinging to her face. Ethan stood beside her, hands on his knees, equally exhausted. Slowly, she looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of something dangerous. Not gratitude, not duty, but respect. She whispered, almost to herself, "You are reckless, human, yet somehow you endure." Ethan gave a tired laugh. Yeah, that's what humans do best. The night pressed in around them, the jungle alive with strange sounds. The war above still raged, shadows of ships crossing the alien moons. But in that moment, deep in the wilderness, a bond had begun to form. A bond neither of them understood, and one that would change the fate of the galaxy. The jungle opened into a valley of broken towers. Tall stone spires rose like the ribs of a dead beast, their edges glowing faint under the alien moons. Ethan slowed, his eyes narrowing, every instinct warning him this place was wrong. Princess Liara, however, straightened with sudden hope. Her violet eyes widened as she spotted a faint blue fire flickering among the ruins. She whispered, almost breathless, "Valari Beacon, my people are here." Ethan frowned, gripping his blaster. "Were your enemies lit that to lure you in?" Liara shot him a cold look. "You do not understand. That flame burns only with royal blood. It is ours. It means safety." Without waiting, she moved toward the light, her steps quick and eager. Ethan cursed under his breath, but followed, his hand never leaving his weapon. They reached the broken tower where the beacon pulsed, and from the shadows, figures emerged. Valari soldiers in silver armor, their weapons lowered at the sight of the princess. One stepped forward, his tall frame familiar to Liara. Her lips parted in relief. "Commander Serac," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time since Ethan had met her. The commander bowed low, his voice deep and respectful. "My princess, by the stars, you are alive." Liara moved closer, almost smiling. "I feared none of my people had survived the hunt." Serac's eyes flickered to Ethan, his jaw tightening. "And yet, a human walks beside you." Ethan crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Nice to meet you too," he muttered. Liara lifted her chin proudly. "This human saved my life more than once," she said firmly. "He is under my protection." Serac's face softened, but his eyes held something sharp beneath. "As you command, my princess," he said, bowing again. But Ethan noticed his grip on the spear was too tight, his gaze too cold. That night, they rested inside the ruins. A fire burned low, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Liara spoke with Serac in hushed tones, relief clear in her voice. For the first time since the crash, she looked at peace. Ethan sat apart, cleaning his blaster, his instincts still prickling like knives against his skin. Hours later, when Liara finally closed her eyes to rest, Ethan stayed awake. He heard the faint scrape of metal behind him. Slowly, he turned, and his blood froze. Commander Serac stood with his spear raised, the blade aimed not at Ethan, but at the princess. Ethan moved fast, his hand slamming into the weapon, deflecting the strike. The clash woke Liara, who sat up in shock. "Serac!" she gasped, her voice breaking. Serac's face twisted, his respect gone, replaced by cold fury. "My princess, forgive me, but your death is the only way to end the war." Liara's eyes widened. "You would betray your oath?" "Betray me?" Serac's voice shook, but his grip was steady. "I serve the Empire, not the crown. If you live, the assassins will keep coming. Millions more will die. Your death will save us all." Ethan stepped between them, blaster raised. "You want her? You'll have to go through me first." Serac's eyes burned. "You should not even be here. Human, this is not your fight." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Maybe not, but I don't let friends get stabbed in their sleep." Liara's breath caught at that word, friends. She had never been called that by anyone outside her bloodline. Her heart wavered, but Serac's blade did not. He lunged forward, and the ruins filled with fire and steel. The fight was brutal, Serac stronger and faster with alien armor. But Ethan fought with raw grit, dodging, blocking, striking with desperate speed. Sparks flew as blaster fire lit the chamber, shadows dancing like ghosts. Liara cried out, torn between her loyalty to her commander and her need for survival. Finally, Ethan seized a broken stone shard and drove it into Serac's side. The commander staggered, falling to one knee, his silver blood spilling across the floor. He looked up at Liara, his voice fading. "I did this for our people." Then his body collapsed, silent and still. The ruins grew quiet, the fire crackling in the silence. Ethan stood panting, bruised and bleeding, his blaster still smoking. He turned to Liara, his voice low. "Still think trusting everyone with a beacon is a good idea?" Her violet eyes shone with pain and conflict. Serac had been her guardian since childhood, her most loyal protector. Now he was gone, not by enemy hands, but by betrayal. And the human she once called foolish had saved her again. For the first time, she lowered her head. Her voice was a whisper, almost broken. "I misjudged you." Ethan sighed, sliding down the wall, exhausted. "Yeah, well, get in line," he muttered. Above them, the warships still roared across the skies. But here, in the shadows of betrayal, the bond between human and princess grew stronger. A bond forged in fire, trust, and blood. The ruins still echoed with Serac's betrayal. The fire burned low, smoke curling against the stone ceiling. Ethan sat against the wall, his armor dented, his blaster near empty. Liara stood in silence, her gaze locked on the fallen body of her once loyal commander. Her voice was quiet, heavy with grief. "He was sworn to protect me, yet even he chose death over my survival." Ethan looked up at her, his eyes tired but steady. Maybe he thought he was saving his people, he said, but he forgot one thing. Liara turned toward him, her violet eyes sharp. "What is that?" Ethan's lips curved in a faint smile. He forgot humans don't play by the rules. Before she could reply, the ground shook with a deep rumble. Outside, the night lit up with searchlights, alien warships moving across the valley. Liara stiffened, her voice sharp. "They found us." Ethan pushed himself up, holstering his weak blaster. "Then let's give them something they won't forget." They slipped out of the ruins, moving through the shadows. Above them, massive drones hovered, scanning the valley with beams of light. Alien soldiers marched in squads, their weapons glowing. It was a net tightening around them. Liara whispered urgently, "We cannot fight them. There are too many. Even I at full strength could not defeat them." Ethan smirked. "Good thing I'm not planning to fight them the normal way." He crouched beside a fallen Volari machine, half buried in vines. Its armor was cracked, wires sparking weakly. Ethan tore open a panel, his hands moving fast. Liara stared in disbelief. "You can use Volari technology?" Ethan shrugged, grinning as he twisted wires together. "I can break it well enough." The machine's energy core flickered, unstable. Ethan pulled a cable free and jammed it into the ground. The earth lit up with glowing veins, sparks racing across the dirt. Liara's eyes widened. You are overloading it. It will collapse the power grid of their scanners. Exactly, Ethan said, pulling her back. Sometimes you don't need to win the battle. You just break the table everyone's playing on. A deep hum filled the air. The drones above flickered, their lights snapping out one by one. The alien soldiers shouted in confusion, their weapons stuttering. Then, with a crack of thunder, the entire valley went dark. The night belonged to Ethan now. He moved quickly, pulling Liara through the chaos. Every soldier stumbled blind without their systems. Every drone fell from the sky, crashing like metal rain. Liara stared at him in shock as they ducked behind a shattered wall. No warrior of my people would ever think to do this, she whispered. Ethan gave a sharp grin. Yeah, that's the problem with warriors, too busy fighting to see another way out. The alien commander shouted orders, trying to restore order. But Ethan wasn't done. He pointed to a massive energy cannon mounted on the hillside, its systems flickering. That's our ride, he said. Liara's eyes narrowed. That is a weapon, not transport. Ethan winked. Not if I rewire it. They sprinted through the shadows, climbing the broken rocks. Ethan pried open the cannon's controls, his hands moving with reckless speed. Sparks burned his gloves. Alarm screamed in alien tongue. Liara watched, stunned. You are insane, she whispered. Ethan grinned through the smoke. Maybe, but it's working. The cannon shifted, its barrel glowing brighter, not with focused fire but unstable energy. Ethan grabbed Liara's hand, pulling her into a small control cabin. Hold on tight, he muttered. Before she could ask why, the cannon erupted, not in a blast of destruction, but in a shockwave of raw force. The explosion hurled them forward, sending the control cabin sliding down the hillside like a burning meteor. They crashed into the jungle below, tumbling through vines and stone. When the smoke cleared, Ethan groaned, pulling himself up. Beside him, Liara coughed, her hair wild, her eyes wide with disbelief. You turn a weapon into an escape craft, she said, almost laughing. Ethan smirked, brushing dust from his armor. Like I said, humans don't play by the rules. For the first time, Liara laughed, a sharp, musical sound quickly stifled by her pride. You are reckless beyond reason, she said, shaking her head. And yet, you succeed. Ethan stretched, wincing at his bruises. That's humanity in a nutshell, he said, reckless, stubborn, and too stupid to quit. But as they moved deeper into the jungle, the sky burned brighter. The Valari Empire had seen the disruption, and now they would hunt not only their princess, but also the human who defied their order. The tide had turned, but the war had only just begun. The jungle finally gave way to open plains. Beyond the hills, a city rose, silver towers glowing under the alien suns. It was battered from war, smoke rising from broken walls, but still standing. Liara stopped, her eyes softening with relief. My home, she whispered, her voice trembling with something Ethan had never heard before. Hope. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. Great. Maybe they'll throw us a welcome party instead of another ambush, he muttered. But deep down, he felt uneasy. If Serac had betrayed her, who else inside this city could be trusted? As they entered the gates, Valari guards rushed forward, their weapons raised. Then, upon seeing Liara, they dropped to one knee, voices rising as one. Princess Liara, the air lives. The sound rolled like thunder through the streets. Civilians poured out, bowing low, their eyes filled with awe and tears. Liara stood tall, even in her torn armor. Her voice carried strong across the city square. Your princess has returned. Do not fear. The empire still breathes. The crowd roared, hope surging like fire through broken hearts. Ethan stood beside her, shifting awkwardly as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. He muttered, they're staring at me like I grew a second head. Liara ignored him, leading him up the marble steps to the grand hall. Inside, nobles and generals gathered, their expressions a mix of joy and suspicion. At the far end, a great throne carved of crystal awaited her. Liara stepped into the light, raising her hand for silence. "My people," she began, her voice firm. "You see me alive when many thought me dead." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the chamber. "I survived because of him." She pointed toward Ethan, who froze as every noble I locked on him. The room rippled with gasps, whispers, and shock. Ethan cleared his throat, muttering under his breath, "Great. Now the whole empire knows I exist. Fantastic." Liara continued, her voice sharp. "This human risked everything, saved me again and again, when even our own betrayed me." The generals shifted uncomfortably. To them, admitting weakness was shame, but the princess spoke with pride, not shame. Then her tone changed, strong as steel. "And by the ancient law of Valari blood, the one who saves the heir's life 3 times is bound. He becomes consort, protector, and husband-to-be." The hall erupted in chaos, nobles shouting, generals slamming fists against the floor. Ethan blinked, his brain short-circuiting. "Wait, what?" he said, his voice cracking. Liara's chin lifted proudly, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of something more. "Yes, human," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You are bound to me by law and by destiny." Ethan stumbled forward, waving his hands. "Hold on, time out." Nobody said anything about marriage. "I was just trying not to get shot." The nobles glared at him with disgust, their whispers sharp and cruel. "A human? As consort? Unthinkable. This is madness. He is not worthy." Ethan turned toward Liara, his voice low but fierce. "Are you serious about this? You can't just throw me into royal marriage like it's a thank-you gift." Liara's eyes burned, but her voice was calm. "This is not a gift, Ethan Hayes. It is law. You saved me not once, but 3 times in the jungle, in the ruins, and against Serac. Our oldest laws demand this bond." Ethan's heart pounded, his mind racing. He wanted to laugh, to scream, to run, but the weight of every alien I held him in place. He muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." Liara stepped closer, her voice dropping so only he could hear. "You may hate me for this, human, but if you refuse, you insult my people, you insult me, and war will burn hotter than before." Ethan stared at her, searching her face. For the first time, he saw more than arrogance in her eyes. He saw fear, hope, and something unspoken. The nobles shouted louder, demanding answers, demanding rejection. Liara turned back to them, raising her hand for silence. Her voice cut like a blade. "Laugh if you wish, call him weak if you wish, but remember this. When I was dying, when our enemies closed in, none of you were there. He was, and for that, he is mine." The hall fell silent. The weight of her words crashed like thunder, leaving even the generals speechless. Ethan rubbed his face, muttering under his breath, "Save the alien princess, and now I'm stuck in a galactic wedding I didn't sign up for." Liara's lips curved in the faintest smile, a rare crack in her pride. "Welcome to the Empire, consort," she whispered. Above them, the great banners of the Valari unfurled again. But now, for the first time in history, they hung alongside a human, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The throne room still rang with silence after Liara's declaration. Every noble, every general, every soldier stared at Ethan with a mix of awe, fear, and fury. The human shifted uncomfortably under their gaze, wishing he could vanish into the floor. When the council finally dismissed, Liara led him through the crystal halls, her chin high. Ethan walked behind, muttering to himself, "Saved the princess, fought the army, hacked the cannon, and now I'm engaged? Great job, Ethan, 10 out of 10. But outside the palace, the news had already spread. Crowds filled the streets, their voices rising in disbelief. "Princess Liara has chosen a human. Impossible. Blasphemy. Yet others whispered something different. If a human can save her, perhaps humans are stronger than we believed. In the shadows of the city, alien spies sent transmissions across the stars. Messages spread like wildfire, reaching enemy factions, rival empires, and hidden warlords. The galaxy was now aware of one dangerous truth. The Valari princess had bound herself to a human. Far away, on a barren moon, a warlord slammed his fist against a table. A human consort? If the Valari ally with Earth, we are finished. In another system, merchants whispered greedily. Humans will rise in value. They will no longer be seen as weak. Trade will change. And in the depths of space, an unseen enemy smiled. Good, let them tie themselves to a fragile race. It will make the fall more glorious. Back in the palace, Ethan paced the chamber he had been given. It was large, luxurious, filled with glowing walls and golden fabrics. But he felt like a prisoner. He muttered to himself, married into an alien empire. What am I supposed to do? Wave at the crowd and pretend I'm royal. Liara entered quietly, her armor replaced by a flowing silver robe. Her presence filled the room like cold fire. Ethan stopped pacing, glaring at her. You can't just decide my life for me, princess. Liara's expression did not change, but her voice was calm. I did not decide for you. Ethan Hayes, fate decided. Our laws decided. Your actions decided. Ethan threw up his hands. Yeah, well, maybe humans don't like being trapped by laws they never agreed to. Liara stepped closer, her violet eyes glowing. Do you think I wanted this? She hissed, her voice trembling with hidden emotion. My own people doubt me. My own commander betrayed me. Yet I stood before them and claimed you, because without that, they would devour you like wolves. Ethan froze, staring at her. For the first time, he heard the truth in her words. This wasn't just about power or law. It was about survival. Not just hers, but his. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. So what now? I pretend to be your consort. Liara's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. You do not need to pretend. Ethan Hayes, you only need to endure, something your kind seems very good at. Before he could reply, the walls of the chamber shook with a deep rumble. An alarm screamed, red light flashing across the palace. Liara stiffened, her voice sharp. An attack. Ethan grabbed his blaster, groaning. Of course, because today wasn't weird enough already. They rushed to the balcony. Above the city, massive ships broke through the clouds, their hulls marked not with Valari symbols, but the dark banners of another empire. Dozens of them, descending like predators. Ethan's stomach dropped. Let me guess, they're not here to congratulate us. Liara's voice was ice. They're here to test us. The skies burned as enemy fire rained down, shaking the city. Citizens screamed and fled as towers collapsed, the war returning in full force. Liara turned to Ethan, her eyes blazing with both fury and something else, trust. Stand with me, human, or the galaxy will fall. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon, muttering under his breath. Save the princess, forced into marriage, and now defending an empire. Yeah, this keeps getting better. The balcony shook as a blast struck nearby. Liara raised her broken staff. Ethan raised his blaster. Side by side, human and alien faced the coming storm. And above them, across the stars, enemies gathered, whispering one truth. The galaxy has a new bond, and it must be broken. The screen fades, the battle just beginning. And the story cuts to black, leaving only silence and the echo of war.